game worlds coming first.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're not gonna want to spend time in a space if it's not interesting.
Yeah,
Obviously.
like Skies of Arcadia. It,
Games?
it was it was a
No.
very adventure exploration JRPG. It's like it's like it's like hey, like all these islands are like all spread out and like nobody knows what's around the world or how you like what's it's like being a pioneer and stuff like that. It's like hey, discovering North America or like the world's actually round and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Xenoblade Chronicles also has a very interesting game world where it's like, hey, it's like you live on a planet, but on this planet you live on these two giant mechs, and you don't know what else is out there. You all you know is just like these two mechs, and you live on them, and just exploring everywhere. It's like, yeah,
I'm gonna gotta transcribe some audio.
interested in that world because of like how much it can interact with, and like it's your essentially any American's like first introduction to like what Japan looks like.
Okay.
In a way, it's like how Japan sort of like works and like their stores and stuff.
And I get what you're saying, but I've never played Shenmue.
I know. I'm just making like examples.
No, I get it. Like it's a game with an interesting world. Yeah.
Mhm.
I can dig that.
That's why I sort of either lean towards sci-fi or fantasy more, like for games,
Mhm.
because they're usually just more interesting.
Yeah. No, they're usually more well developed worlds. A little better thought out.
Like
Yeah.
if you base things on the real world, it's like why like the problem.
Why even bother?
Yeah, it's like the real world's usually pretty boring unless you make it amazingly interesting. It's like all about the characters, you know. But like that sort of doesn't like it, like the problem about Fallout or Skyrim is that you go around this world, but you are feeling like you are supposed to be the character, but then because it's like the characters are like the main characters are blank slates, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, you're just there for the ride, but then there's really nothing around to really ride about. Like, it's like traveling around Skyrim and the wastelands of Fallout is pretty interesting, but then it can hold you for so long. Like, since the story is about you, the problem is that you are boring. You yourself are boring. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna go here. I'm just gonna keep picking up all of these things. Like, if you were to make a let's play of yourself playing Fallout 4, you'll probably be picking up a lot of shit.
Yeah.
While on the other
Basically
hand,
all things.
like The Witcher or like The Witcher 3, you play a fleshed out character,
Yeah, you have a predefined character.
and he's much more interesting, and like how he totally screwed himself over by banging every girl he meets, sort of thing. Or like, hey, or like his interactions with people do matter and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like while in Fallout, it's kind of meaningless.
They sort of matter a bit.
Not as heavily as The Witcher 3.
Oh yeah, no.
Like, even in like good RPGs, even though it's very linear, it makes it feel like you're doing something instead of just like you're always progressing at doing something important instead of like, hey, I got something very important to do, but wait, give me 3 hours. I'll be back for you, even though it's like a super like you'll be dead and you're supposedly going to die in like 3 minutes. But don't worry, I'll be back in 3 hours instead. Oh my god, stupid. You should just metamorphosize into an octopus.
Yeah, well, I mean, open world games are always going to have that same sort of pacing problem with their stories.
The problem is that...
Because, yeah, like, they have to let you explore, usually, so...
Yeah, but the problem is that Fallout isn't supposed to be like that.
What?
Like, Fallout is more... Like, you lose that very world interaction that you used to get back in the older games, but now you turned it more into like a lot of these other open world games, like Just Cause 3, or like Far Cry games, right?
Yeah.
Like, it turned more into those games, even though Fallout isn't supposed to be those games. Like, it's kind of a weird sort of thing going on where like shooters nowadays are turning more and more into sort of like RPGs. Like, the term RPG is kind of loose now because anything can be an RPG. Because you roleplay as like this character, right? Or that character. Or you roleplay as yourself, right? That's the part of like role playing in a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, Fallout 4 isn't really an RPG anymore. Like, it's more of an open world shooter, but it still has the tag on the box that says RPG.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting. Like, what makes an RPG though? Like, you know, leveling, but first-person shooters like are like the open world games like Far Cry makes you level up.
Yeah.
But like the story, Far Cry has a story, right? So what really defines an RPG now, right? It's like
you interact with the world in ways that are not just shooting things.
but you sort of do that in Far Cry also, right?
Okay, but
You get attacked by bears and like all
and
that
then you
stuff.
shoot them.
Yeah.
I don't think that qualifies as like an RPG thing.
But like you take your quests and like killed stuff. It's like in MMORPGs or like even fantasy RPGs, you take your quests, you interact with the people, and then do the quest, then you finish it, right?
Like, there's usually not a ton of options in how you actually, Okay. So like, in an RPG, say, for example, if they wanted you to, go to, like Group A says, go to Group B's area and, I don't know, shoot all Group B. But you could instead just go to Group B's area and like sort of talk to them and be like, "Hey, yo, these dudes want you dead. You can just go, or you can shoot all of them, or you could like sneak attack their leader and like drive them away or whatever."
So like a heavy interaction with the world.
Yeah.
Like, see, The Witcher 3 does that. Deus Ex Human Revolution and like the first Deus Ex does that, where it does make an impact in what you do. So
yeah,
it's like you go to Fallout, the new Fallout that is. It's like it's basically not the RPG. Like, you wouldn't even categorize it as an RPG anymore. You call it a first-person open-world shooter like Far Cry.
Yeah, because your default method of interaction with the world is shooting things.
Like,
right? Like you barely talk to people, and when you do, conversations are simplified, and your choices rarely matter within those conversations.
and then I think also dialogue trees, like voice acted dialogue trees, also sort of you lose a lot of that interaction.
Yeah. Because yeah, if you're voice acting all your dialogue, then yeah, that means you have limited dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's just not practical to have them voice like whatever 6,000 6 million lines of dialogue
Mm-hmm.
for each possible option. Yeah, it's just silly.
Mm-hmm. Like what I liked about the first mission of like Human Revolution is that, hey, we got hostages. You better save those hostages, But like, if you do really take your time, like any other video game, like, for instance, I heard in Fallout 4 that, hey, or like several other RPGs, it's like, hey, we need to rush to that area, or else something's gonna happen, right? And then you're like, nope, I got sidetracked. I'm for like 3 hours looking at other areas,
Yeah, no, you can go off and look at, I don't know, cows for like 3 hours.
Yeah. Well,
And the game doesn't punish you for it. There's no time constraint. Whereas something
while
like
Deus Ex Human Revolution, when you take your time, through the level, just searching around, the hostages will die,
yeah. Like there's actually like a timer that goes.
It's a very natural progression, compared to like several other games. It's sort of why I guess I didn't like Dark Souls 2, because it seems like your decisions didn't matter much. It seems you were just really forced to do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
It's like,
No,
hey, become king. Okay, I guess I'll go kill
there
these
are
guys now.
basically no choices.
It's like, but like, even so, like, even if you don't have choices, it's like the heavy impact you carry through like a very good story. That's why story's like also important in a way in an RPG, even though it's like you won't have as much, you won't impact the game by your decisions, because these pre-decisions made by the developers, like if they do it right and wrote it properly, it'll feel like you actually did something really bad or good,
Yeah.
or like, oh man, I feel for these guys, it's like I just blew up a whole entire city by accident, sort of thing. I didn't mean to do that. It's like you think you were going to like destroy a reactor to save the Earth because you were hired as a mercenary. It's like, we need to save the Earth. We need to save the planet. But then by destroying that reactor, it in turn crushes everyone who lives under that reactor. It's like a Final Fantasy thing. Like, they have subplates. It's like a human Deus Ex Revolution where people live under the city, right? There's like several levels. So then by destroying that, you crushed everyone underneath it. It's like, well, you guys are idiots. I feel like an idiot for even joining you guys, sort of thing, right? Man. Yeah. I don't know. Having a Fallout character being very normal is kind of like not as interesting. Like, if they went back to like, hey, if you don't have a lot of intelligence, if you didn't put your intelligence into, intelligence or charisma, you'd be like super dumb, right? It like changes the game for you also.
Yeah, no, like the original games, if you take really low intelligence, you'll communicate normally with other really low intelligence characters, but otherwise,